charged in the death of her 6-year-old daughter. Last month, investigators say 6-year-old Alani Barfield accidentally shot and killed herself.
Now prosecutors want to hold her mother, Yolanda Barfield, responsible. They claim the gun was unsecured, kept underneath a mattress. Our Bella Caracta joins us live in the studio to continue our coverage.
John Aaron, in court, we learned why Yolanda Barfield kept a gun under her mattress. New tonight, how some people experiencing domestic violence sometimes end up being charged themselves. I spoke with Katie Welsh with the Women's Center for Advancement to help us better understand the situation here. Prosecutors say this mother was careless for leaving a loaded gun within reach of her children. Her attorney says her ex-boyfriend terrorized her family.
She was scared for her life. Not only was she scared for her life, she was scared for her children's lives.
Last June, a judge granted Barfield this domestic violence protection order against her ex-boyfriend, who's also a father to one of her children. Her attorney says he violated the order 3 times just last month and became increasingly more antagonizing in the 2 weeks leading to her daughter's death.
We're talking 9 days that there could have been something done. 9 days. Nothing was done. My client was just trying to protect her children.
The Women's Center for Advancement supports people experiencing abuse. Every month, the WCA helps request 40 to 50 protection orders.
Protection orders are about safety.
But WCA advocates take safety a step further.
I would never tell anybody to solely rely on a protection order. They have to think about their safety from a lot of different facets. Financial safety, physical safety.
If a client wanted to have a gun for their safety, she would encourage them to weigh the pros and cons first, and then get training and make sure to store it safely. A lingering question, why was her ex-boyfriend able to violate the protection order multiple times? I spoke with Douglas County Attorney Don Klein. He tells me the attorney who got the paperwork from Omaha police was on a murder trial and his response was delayed. However, the attorney and OPD were communicating before the death of the child to build a stronger case against the ex-boyfriend. And that effort is still ongoing. Live in the studio, I'm Bella Caracta, First Alert 6.